everyone, I'm Jenny Dorsey. I'm a professional chef, food studies researcher, and food writer. I'm here in the Meatmen studio to make a little mooncake for Mid-Autumn Festival, but these are a little different from what you might be used to, the kind of sweet version that you often find in Singapore. These are from my mother's hometown, so they're savory. They're a little bit more like the siu bao you might be familiar with or have eaten before, flaky, kind of crispy, nice golden brown baked deliciousness. So today we're going to do a shortcut version, a hack version, so to speak, because I know making the multi-layered laminated dough here in hot and humid Singapore can be a little challenging. I love these mooncakes because they are super easy to freeze, and with the puff pastry, they're also super easy to make, so you can make a whole lot at once. I'm definitely not just eating these for mid-autumn. So we're gonna get started on the filling. My mother usually uses Walla Walla sweet onions since she is in Seattle and it's pretty close to Walla Walla. If you haven't been there, it is a very special place full of very sweet onions and grapes. It's very difficult to find those onions outside of the US, I am now realizing. So I am substituting with a giant Japanese scallion, which is meant to be also quite sweet. Essentially, you're looking for something that's going to add some textural contrast in the filling, but also not be too pungent. And then we'll just do like a rough chop on these. Something that's gonna roughly match the grain of your minced pork. We're gonna saute off our shiitakes and then we're gonna weigh them out. I'm using just a neutral oil here. The aim is to just get all the wet moisture content out of our shiitake mushrooms so that when we put them into the filling, they're not like leaking water out of our filling as it's baking. Our shiitakes. And as always, you want to be seasoning as you're cooking. So even though this is going to be combined with some soy sauce and seasonings later on, I'm just adding a little bit of salt. It really does kind of like just provides like a little more depth of flavor. So even though sauteing is technically a dry cooking method, you do need an appropriate amount of oil in the pan because you need the oil to create that kind of friction between the food and the heat source. Otherwise, you have a dry hot pan with mushrooms, like you're gonna eventually burn the mushrooms. You're not really creating that nice like golden browning effect. We're just gonna process these mushrooms, give them a rough chop. So again, trying to keep all of our textures roughly the same. If you don't have a food processor at home, you can just roughly chop these by hand. So I would recommend sauteing them first and then chopping so that you have less volume of mushroom to work with. Now we're gonna get to assembling. So we've got our ground pork, and then I'll add in all of our scallion today, sweet onion if you can source. And what I like to do, you can see that my bowl with the pork and everything is actually on the scale. So you can weigh directly onto here, just saves you a little bit of time. And some mushroom. And now we're gonna go in with some sauces. So we'll do both light and dark soy sauce. One trick that I just didn't do right now that I could have is if you don't want your dark soy sauce to stick to your measuring spoons, first of all, you can weigh it instead of doing the spoons, or you can put a little bit of oil in the spoon, swish it around, and then it'll slide off. You can also do that when you're measuring other sticky substances like honey or molasses, adding a little bit of sugar. I like to use like raw sugar. I think it adds like a nice kind of extra bodily flavor texture, but you can also use white sugar. I'm also using a little bit of tapioca starch. You can also use potato starch, something that's just gonna kind of bind everything together. Now we're gonna portion out our filling. So we're going to portion it out to roughly 30 grams. The whole idea here is that you want all of your mooncakes to be the same size, or else you're gonna have to cook them for different lengths of time, and then some will be under and some will be over, and that's not great. We're going to do portion by portion. I have it on the scale, so you don't have to calculate in your head, and you're just gonna kind of try and put them into a slightly, I guess, more even shape, just compress them slightly. They don't have to be perfect. They're going inside a filling, so it's all okay. And we're just gonna stick these in the freezer for a few minutes, just to make them a little bit firmer. It'll make it easier for you to wrap. Now we're gonna get started on our hack pastry. So we're using puff pastry today instead of doing the whole lamination process of a traditional flaky mooncake, where you would have a lard-based dough and then a water-based dough, and then you would, do the jelly roll thing and slice and roll. It is quite time-consuming, and it is a little bit difficult in Singapore's damp and kind of moist weather. So puff pastry is essentially laminated pastry. Laminated means there's dough and then there's butter for puff pastry, and then dough. And so the whole idea of how it makes how the puff happens, is that butter in between the layers of dough has both fat and it also has water. So as you bake the puff pastry, the water evaporates, it turns into steam, right? And so that pushes the dough up, and then so you get those layers in between the dough, and that's the puff. That's not gonna happen the same way with a flaky kind of classic mooncake dough because it's using lard and not butter, so it doesn't puff as much. Obviously, it's gonna taste a little different, but close enough. I think you'll be happy with the fact that you didn't have to spend hours rolling the dough, which I do when I go home. So you'll just lightly flour your surface, flour your pastry, and you're going to just gently roll this out. So we have all of our things in front of us. So we have slightly chilled little mounds of filling, and then we have our dough. So we have a nice big circle cutter today, but if you don't have one at home, you can kind of just approximate around your filling. It doesn't have to be perfect because you're gonna pinch off at the end and it will look fine. You could put this down here and then just roughly go about, let's say, in a circle. So you don't have to be too stressed about it being perfect. Okay, so you're simply just going to twist it, kind of like at the top. You put it in the palm of your hand, and then you just twist off any excess. So if you have a little extra, it's better to go extra than have a gap, and then you're gonna pinch together. Boop! We have our little mooncakes. We're gonna do a little brushy brush action with a egg yolk. These look nice. Let's do a little sesame seed action. These look good, so let's go into the oven with them. All right, the moment of truth. This is my first time eating this particular brand of puff pastry as well, so I am excited. This looks good. Nice, puffy, developed layers. Let's go for it. I really like that this puff pastry is very neutral, so it's really nice and flaky. Yeah, it's like not overwhelming, gives you some like nice airy texture, and then you get the nice density of the filling, and the shiitake mushrooms, always a winner. I can eat so many of these all day long. One of my exes ate like 30 of these in a row, so if you love them as much as I do, let me know in the comments how many you ate in one sitting. Thanks so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. Please make it your own. Let me know in the comments how it went. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments as well. And please tell us what other content you're excited to watch, whether it's more family recipes like this one, or more food knowledge, food studies, education that I can talk all day about. Let me know topics you might want to cover, or other types of recipes that you're interested in following along with. So until next time, see you later.